involved in the beautification conservation effort.
Let me try to explore.
Lady Bird Johnson's story, when you follow it all the way through, doesn't settle into a simple conclusion. Instead, it keeps unfolding in layers, each one revealing something new about how power, resilience, and quiet influence can shape history without always being visible. What makes Lady Bird Johnson so compelling is not just what she did in public, but how she carried everything privately, often without recognition and sometimes without relief. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. After leaving the White House in 1969, you might expect her life to finally slow down, to become quieter and easier. But for someone like her, stillness was never truly comfortable. The years that followed were not about stepping away from purpose, but about redefining it. Without the constant demands of Washington, she turned more deeply toward the things that had always mattered to her, especially the environment. And this is where another part of her legacy began to grow, one that didn't rely on politics in the traditional sense, but still carried enormous influence. In 1982, she co-founded the National Wildflower Research Center in Austin, Texas, which would later become the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center. This wasn't just a symbolic project, it reflected something deeply personal. For years, she had believed that beauty in public spaces wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. Clean landscapes, native plants, and preserved natural areas weren't just aesthetic choices to her. They were connected to how people felt, how communities functioned, and how a country saw itself. While others focused on large political victories, she focused on something quieter but just as lasting, the idea that improving the environment could improve everyday life. That shift shows an important pattern in her life. Even when she stepped away from direct political power, she never stepped away from influence. She simply changed how she used it. Instead of working through legislation and policy debates, she worked through education, advocacy, and long-term projects that would continue long after she was gone. It's a different kind of power, less visible, but often more sustainable. At the same time, her relationship with Lyndon B. Johnson continued to evolve. The years after his presidency were not easy for him. The weight of decisions, especially those connected to Vietnam, followed him closely. And while the public often focused on his political legacy, Lady Bird saw something more personal. She saw the toll that had taken on him physically and mentally. In those years, she became not just a partner, but a stabilizing presence, someone who understood his struggles in a way very few others could. When Lyndon Johnson passed away in 1973, the loss marked another turning point in her life. After decades of being part of a partnership that defined both her public and private identity, she had to face a new kind of independence. And that transition is something many people overlook. It's one thing to stand beside a powerful figure. It's another to redefine yourself once that figure is gone. She handled that transition with the same quiet determination that had defined her earlier years. She didn't retreat completely, but she also didn't seek the spotlight. Instead, she found a balance, remaining active in causes she believed in while also protecting her personal space in a way she hadn't always been able to before. Looking back, one of the most striking things about her life is how often she operated in the background, even when her influence was central. The radio station she built into a profitable business, the television expansion that helped create wealth, the political campaigns she supported, and the policies she shaped indirectly, all of these things carried her imprint. Yet, for much of her life, she was described in softer terms, as supportive, as graceful, as quiet. Those descriptions weren't wrong, but they weren't complete either. Because behind that calm presence was someone who made decisions, took risks, and understood systems in a way that allowed her to move through them effectively. Whether it was negotiating with networks, pushing for environmental reforms, or advising her husband on political strategy, she was actively shaping outcomes, even if she wasn't the one standing in front of the microphone. Her earlier business success with KTBC also takes on a different meaning when viewed in the context of her entire life. At the time, it may have looked like a smart investment, but in hindsight, it was something more. It showed that she had the ability to recognize opportunity, to act on it, and to manage it successfully over time. Those are not passive qualities. They are the traits of someone who understands both risk and reward and who is willing to take action when others might hesitate. Of course, questions and controversies never fully disappeared. The timing of FCC approvals, the connection between her business success and Lyndon's political position, and the whispers about influence and favoritism remained part of her story. And those questions are important because they remind us that power is rarely simple. It often exists in gray areas where personal relationships and professional decisions overlap in ways that are difficult to separate. But even within that complexity, one thing remains consistent. She didn't build her life on a single role. She wasn't only a first lady, only a businesswoman, or only a political partner. She moved through all of those roles, sometimes at the same time, adapting to what each moment required. And that ability to adapt is what allowed her to remain relevant and effective across decades of change. In her later years, as she became more reflective, her diaries and writings gained even more significance. They weren't just personal records, they became historical documents, offering insight into moments that shaped the country. Through her words, you can see not just what happened, but how it felt to be there, to witness events as they unfolded, and to carry the emotional weight of those moments long after they passed. That's what makes her story stand out. Not just the events themselves, but the perspective she brought to them. A perspective that combined observation, empathy, and a deep understanding of how different parts of society connect to each other. When she passed away in 2007 at the age of 94, she left behind a legacy that is still being understood, not because it was hidden, but because it was layered. It doesn't fit into a single narrative or a simple definition. It stretches across business, politics, environment, and personal resilience. And maybe that's the most accurate way to see her life, not as a straight line of achievements, but as a network of decisions, influences, and moments that together created something much larger than any one role could explain. Because in the end, Lady Bird Johnson's story isn't just about how she built an empire or supported a presidency. It's about how she navigated a world where power, responsibility, and personal strength were constantly intersecting, and how even in that complexity, she managed to leave something behind that continues to grow, quietly, just like the landscapes she cared so deeply about. And even after everything that had already been written into history, there's still another layer to understand about Lady Bird Johnson, something that doesn't sit in headlines or political timelines, but in the way her influence quietly continued shaping people long after she stepped out of public office. Because the real measure of a life like hers isn't just what happened during the most visible years, it's what kept moving forward when the cameras were gone and the pressure had faded. In the decades after the White House, one of the most striking things about her was how intentional she became with her time. She didn't drift, she chose carefully where to place her energy. That choice reflects a kind of awareness that often only comes after years of experience, the understanding that not every opportunity needs to be taken and not every voice needs to be answered. Instead of trying to remain constantly present in public life, she became selective, focusing on projects and causes that aligned deeply with her values. This is where her environmental work becomes even more significant. It wasn't just about planting flowers or preserving landscapes in a decorative sense, it was about creating a lasting framework. The idea that future generations should inherit something better, not just economically, but physically and emotionally through the spaces they live in. And that mindset shows a long-term vision that goes beyond immediate results. At the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, that vision took form in a way that could be seen and experienced. Native plants, sustainable landscaping, ecological education, all of it came together to create a living example of what she believed in. And what makes it powerful is that it continues to operate independently of her. That's the mark of something built to last, not dependent on one person's presence, but strong enough to continue on its own. At the same time, her relationship with Lyndon B. Johnson continued to evolve. The years after his presidency were not easy for him. The weight of decisions, especially those connected to Vietnam, followed him closely. And while the public often focused on his political legacy, Lady Bird saw something more personal. She saw the toll it had taken on him physically and mentally. In those years, she became not just a partner, but a stabilizing presence, someone who understood his struggles in a way very few others could. When Lyndon Johnson passed away in 1973, the loss marked another turning point in her life. After decades of being part of a partnership that defined both her public and private identity, she had to face a new kind of independence. And that transition is something many people overlook. It's one thing to stand beside a powerful figure, it's another to redefine yourself once that figure is gone. She handled that transition with the same quiet determination that had defined her earlier years. She didn't retreat completely, but she also didn't seek the spotlight. Instead, she found a balance, remaining active in causes she believed in while also protecting her personal space in a way she hadn't always been able to before. Looking back, one of the most striking things about her life is how often she operated in the